Okay, so we just went over a lot of different types of nonverbal communication. Um, and there's a huge amount of nonverbal communication cues being communicated at all times. The sheer amount of nonverbal cues that we've discussed today illustrates all of the channels utilized and shows how there's no discrete beginning or ending. Nonverbal communication has a vast amount of potential to shift the way a message is received. So let's just finish this up, talk about nonverbal competence. Just as it is important to be a competent verbal communicator, we need to take the same steps to be competent nonverbal communicators. Here are some ways we can be mindful of our own and others' nonverbal cues. After this lecture, you have the tools to monitor nonverbal communication, observe it in action, and be aware of how it impacts the message being communicated. We should try to resist jumping to conclusions since we understand that nonverbal communication is ambiguous and we definitely cannot read people like a book. If you're getting mixed messages from someone's nonverbal cues, clarify. That's going to save you a lot of confusion and maybe even fights. Additionally, keep tabs on multiple nonverbal cues. If you're usually keyed into eye contact, pay attention to body position and gestures to avoid making a generalization based on a singular nonverbal cue. I stated multiple times throughout this presentation that cultures use and receive nonverbal cues differently. If you're traveling abroad, not now though. If you're traveling abroad or have the opportunity to study abroad, it'll serve you to do some research on the culture so you use appropriate nonverbal cues and avoid offending anyone. And vice versa. If you think back on interactions you may have had where people from a different culture maybe use perhaps the wrong nonverbal for the situation, it might just be because they didn't know better, not because they were intending to be rude. Lastly, now that you know nonverbal cues have a huge influence on the reception of a message, do your best to make sure that your nonverbal and verbal cues match up. We now know how difficult it is to decipher what's really going on there. We know that nonverbals can be perceived differently. So I recommend doing your part and lowering confusion for others. So that is the end of my presentation. Feel free to ask any questions. Hope everyone's doing all right, staying safe and healthy and sane.